ديننا لن يضام، نحن جيل همام، نحن فينا عمر، لا 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 لن يطول الظلام، ديننا لن يضام، نحن جيل همام، نحن فينا عمر.
صبح بدا نور ظهر، نجم وشمس وقمر، ألقى على الدنيا الدرر، هذا عمر هذا عمر. كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر، كي تستفيد من العبر، هذا عمر هذا عمر.
لا لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح، نحن أهل الكفاح، نحن فينا عمر. لا لن تدوم الجراح، بل سيأتي الصباح، نحن أهل الكفاح، نحن فينا عمر.
نظراته برق لمع، كلماته رعد سمع، كالموج عال مرتفع، هذا عمر هذا عمر. أهدى لنا أحلى السير، نزلت توافقه السور، واختاره خير البشر، هذا عمر هذا عمر.
لا لن يظل البلاء، سوف يسمو الثياب، نحن جند السماء، نحن فينا عمر. لا لن يظل البلاء، سوف يسمو الثياب، نحن جند السماء، نحن فينا عمر.
يوم روى إسلامه، يوم حكى إقدامه، يوم رأى إلهامه، هذا عمر. يوم جنى أحلامه، يوم بكى أيامه، وانهار من هول الخبر، هذا عمر هذا عمر.
يظل البلاء، سوف يسمو الثياب، نحن جند السماء، نحن فينا عمر. لا لن يظل البلاء، سوف يسمو الثياب، نحن جند السماء، نحن فينا عمر.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First of all, we would like to welcome you to Islamic Voices Live. Bi'iznillahi ta'ala, we have an amazing show, amazing discussion on an amazing topic that is just making the whole world go upside down. And we have an amazing lineup. We have from Germany and also from who is originally from Afghanistan, and you will get to know him a bit more once we actually start discussing. We have Brother Rahmatullah Nowruz. Many of you know him as the CEO and the founder of Qamar Foundation. Qamar Foundation that is doing some amazing work inside Afghanistan. Brother Nowruz or Rahmatullah was just there in Afghanistan, and he has returned to Germany, and we are going to have up to date what is going on the ground bi'iznillahi ta'ala from there. He's also many of you know him as a speaker, as someone who speaks on current affairs of the Islamic world, and also entrepreneur. He is also the founder of the Qamar Institute for Social and Islamic Change, or the College Islamic Research. So there is a lot that is going on, and amazing people here. Second, we have Sheikh Omar Baloch. Many of you also know him from Chicago, who was a resident scholar here, student of Dr. Israr Ahmed and Sheikh Israr, and also Sheikh Imran Hussein. He studied in Saudi Arabia, Masr, and Egypt, Pakistan. Also studied psychology of religion at Georgetown University. He has been keenly aware of the Afghani culture, the Taliban movement, and how modern events relate to the Islamic eschatology today. And then ultimately, Sheikh Omar, as he said, he's a student of Quran. And finally, we have Abu Talha. Dr. Abu Talha is very well known in the Islamic circles, both in the Western and the Eastern world. Dr. Muhammad Malkawi, PhD from University of Chicago, Urbana-Champaign in computer engineering, 1986. received an MS in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Yarmouk University. Has He's the author of Fall of Capitalism and Rise of Islam. Seems like a very, very, very timely book, published in 2010. Also, he has written and spoken on many topics such as terrorism, economic justice, Islam versus capitalism, virtual economy, Islam and Middle East conflict, the Gulf crisis, the Second World Gulf War, the intellectual framework of Islam, the rise and fall of oil prices, poverty, relative scarcity versus wealth distribution, Arab Spring, revolution, causes, impact, and prospects. That is another very timely article. Causes, impacts, and prospects. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Welcome to the show, brothers.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah.
Can you all hear me?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All right, so it is. I want to get right away to the topics, but before I go there, I wanted to kind of start with, there is so much going on. There is, of course, right after Sham, the revolutions starting all the way from Tunis to Egypt to Libya to the places of Sham, to the Levant, and now to Central Asia. So the Islamic movement is moving. Before we get to this topic, if one of you guys can kind of give us the Islamic background of Afghanistan. What is the role of Islam and what has been the role of Islam in Afghanistan? Anybody can jump on this. Okay, how about Abu Talha? Or anyone?
I think let some of the brothers who are more familiar on the Afghan background.
Go ahead. I think that would be Brother Rahmatullah, and even also, inshallah,
Yes.
Sheikh Omar. But because you have been on the ground, you've been there, you are there, a little bit of the background of Islam in Afghanistan, Sheikh.
You are muted.
I think we can't hear you, Brother Rahmatullah.
Your mic is muted, I think.
Okay, until you get on, how about Sheikh Omar? What is the role of Islam in this area, Sheikh?
Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Actually, this area has played a huge role in Islamic history. Everything from turning upside down the Umayyad Empire. As you know, it was this area of Khorasan that the people came from to establish the Abbasid Empire. And then after the Ottoman Empire, this was the route from which Islam went into the Indian subcontinent. So the Islam of the Indian subcontinent comes from this route of Afghanistan. In the beginning, it was south of India in the early days, and Muhammad bin Qasim in the early days. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the early days, it was Muhammad bin Qasim, and Islam came. The Shafi'i, you can say, just to kind of like give it a label, the Shafi'i mazhab came to South India. But then the Hanafi, and then you can say the Tasawwuf, the Qadariya, the Chishtiya, the Naqshbandiya, the different groups, and that Islam came through the Ottoman. Okay, so the Hanafi, because the Ottoman Empire was Hanafi, and because they were Hanafi, so that Islam, the Hanafi / Tasawwuf Islam, came into the Indian subcontinent via Afghanistan. Okay, through the jihad that they had in the beginning, and then Aurangzeb and the others, they were supported by the strength of Afghanistan, you can say. Even the Mughal Empire needed Afghanistan as kind of like a military stronghold. So the Indian subcontinent Islam, that culture, the Farsi language, that whole Persian culture, all of that, the Rumi, you can say, and the Ottoman, that came into what is today Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Okay, so that is the Hanafi / Tasawwuf Islam that came in, that had a great impact. So Afghanistan has always had a great impact on Muslim history. Like I said, early on, with the against the Umayyads, and then even before that. Okay, because how many of the muhaddiseen and how many of the scholars of Islam they were from this general area, of what you can call Khorasan or Afghanistan, which includes everything from Uzbekistan, because this is not one culture though. This is many different cultures, many different tribes, and so they're culturally very different. They have some things in common, like some aspects that are common are the language, but again, there are many languages in Afghanistan, but Farsi seems to be like one of the common languages that they have. And then the other thing that's very important about this area, that up to the first 1,000 years, all the important books, they were written in Arabic. So up to 1,000 years, you can say all the important books were written in Arabic. But after the 1,000 years, for the next 300 years almost, all the important books were written in Farsi. In my opinion, you can't really be an Islamic scholar, at least for the last 300 years, if you don't know Farsi. Because Farsi was the religious language of the Ottoman too. So the Turkish language was the administrative language. The religious language was not Arabic. The religious language was Farsi. So anyway, that's getting into more details. But the point is that Afghan culture, that language, it played a great role.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Rahmatullah, what, so would you like to add some more on there? Because I have a lot of questions for you. I mean, but I want you to add, being from there, being an Afghani, being Afghani in a sense from not nationalism, but being from there, being from the culture, you're hearing somebody else talk to basically you that what has happened in this area. So tell us, Sheikh, what is Afghanistan?
Jazakallah khair.
The end of empires.
Well, Allah bless you. Interestingly enough, I have read the history of Afghanistan with the recent event of American being defeated. I read it. I found completely different angle of the history. It was so interesting to me that I found a completely different angle, and the angle is that I'm going to share that, considering the live session. Basically, when Islam entered Afghanistan, it was 667 up to 700. But the initial, I'm not going to mention a lot of dates and stages, but I'm going to make it a story. So inshallah, people understand this live session, inshallah, will be beneficial. So basically, when Islam entered Afghanistan, of course, after the death of Muhammad, 5 years later, the Persia was conquered. The conquest of Afghanistan was on the way because it was an important strategic location. They could access India. They could access, of course, Pakistan, the modern day Pakistan, because it was Khorasan, and it was strategic location. So they entered the first city, Herat in Balkh, and the Muslim were there, and they had a huge fight. The conquest wasn't easy with Afghan people. And what was interesting, it took them 150 years to conquer some part of Afghanistan. But in the return, what happens when they would accept Islam, but they will always get rebellions from the mountain people. And Al-Biruni is writing interesting story, and he labeled these mountain people, I would not use the word of Al-Biruni, what he's used, difficult people. He have called them actually miserable.
I think he said barbarians.
Yeah.
I think that was the word.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm proud of that. It's okay. You can use it.
What I'm trying to say is that they were extremely difficult. Like, somebody can understand maybe people like Vikings who were in Scandinavia, and Afghan were the people who were in the city, the more urban area, they were good. But the people from the mountain, they were the most difficult to deal with. And every time they will come, they will say, okay, we will accept Islam with conditions. Then they will go back, and then they will rebel again. And then they will fight. So it took them 150 years to at least conquer some part of Afghanistan, like Ghazni, Ghor. And actually, the conquest of Afghanistan wasn't done primarily by the Arabs or by the Turks. It was actually Afghan people who accepted Islam and then promoted in the different areas, including one of the person that was Yaqub Ibn al-Layth, something that close name. He became the Amir of Ghazni, and especially from Zaranj city. He became the Amir, and he understood the local people, how to talk to them. And he even made a deal with people in Kabul, people in Jalalabad, because mostly in those areas there were a lot of Hindus, and Balkh there were Buddhists. and Nuristan and Kunar. In these areas, they were mostly Zoroastrians and fire worshippers. So different religion was there. In fact, even Jewish were there. Christians were not there mainly, but Hindus were the prime religion, and second was Buddhist, Zoroastrianism, and Jew community also existed. So he made a deal with them that, okay, fine, certain degree we will agree with you, but at least try to give us space. It was their good manners with the Afghan community, and then they accepted Islam. It wasn't through war, actually. They failed multiple times to have war because they were rebel back from the mountain. And even Al-Idrisi, he is writing the same story and calling them what you just called them. And those tribes were mostly Pashtun tribe and mostly the mountain tribe, which existed across modern day Pakistan, which is actually even Balochistan up to Punjab, modern day Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Jalalabad, Peshawar, of course, these areas. And but still they couldn't capture the whole Afghanistan and to make them Muslim. It's still very difficult for them. In fact, the communities like Nuristan, which were called Kafiristan, which I came from, they accepted Islam about 1.5 year, I think close to 160 years. So I'm a new Muslim amongst you. My ancestors, they accepted Islam about 150 years ago. They later on again, huh? Have any question on this part?
No, I said Subhanallah. I mean, it's
So,
amazing to hear that. Yeah.
so what is the story? I mean, the lessons that I took from the recent event. Number one, you cannot deal with Afghan with war. It's a very interesting, and you have to find a method that's working. An outsider will not be able to function in Afghanistan, even if they have a true message, the message of Islam. It has to be a local understanding. And the third reason how they spread the message of Islam, it was through Jarga, speaking to the elders of the community, to the Shah of the community. For example, in that time they had Shah and kings, and speaking to them and making them understand the message of Islam. And that's how they accept Islam. Once they accepted Islam, of course, the rest, mashallah, brother mentioned that then they went on to fight for Islam and for the glory of Islam. And inshallah, in the course of this live session, we will discuss the conquest of India and other part of the world. Inshallah, we're mainly the army from Khorasan, modern day Afghanistan, were involved.
Inshallah, inshallah. So, Dr. Abu Talha, what is the deal? Talking about deals.
Well, brother Rahmatullah just summarized the essence of the Afghani people, whether before Islam or within Islam or after Islam, which is really you cannot conquer Afghanistan simply by war. You have to find ways of negotiating with the Jirga, with the elderly, with the leaders, and today, of course, with groups and parties. So, having said that, let me jump into the most recent history when the Soviet Union decided to invade Afghanistan and take over, thinking that they can add Afghanistan to the other Islamic republics, which they conquered in the beginning of the last century, 20th century, meaning Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, which are most of them have direct borders with Afghanistan. And the Soviet Union had a great success, temporarily, of course, conquering these lands, not knowing the difference between the culture, the let me call it the natural tribal culture of Afghanistan and those cultures of the Uzbek and the Tajik. They thought that they can conquer Afghanistan, and of course, let me also emphasize at the time when they invaded Afghanistan, there was the U.S. Soviet Union so-called Cold War in public, but in privately there were some agreements that each one of them will not interfere in the affairs of the others. So the Soviet thought that the United States will not interfere, but then to their surprise, it was only a few months before the Americans started pouring lots of arms through Pakistan and lots of people through with the help of the Saudi money from Saudi Arabia, recruiting uh, people from the Arabs, from the Malaysia, from Turkey, from all over the world. And then the whole group of Mujahideen was created with many groups. Of course, we remember the groups led by Rabbani, by Mujaddidi, Abd Rabb Rasul Sayyaf, Hikmat Yar, and others, uh, which who eventually, many of them, if I'm not talking about the names in particular, but uh, very soon we had these two major groups, a group funded by the Soviets and installed by the Soviets in Kabul with Muhammad Taraki and then Hafidullah Amin. And then, of course, the groups that were completely funded and militarized by the United States and European powers, and of course, with the help of the Saudi money. And in fact, Osama bin Laden came from Saudi Arabia with the complete support of the Saudis at the time. Eventually, Soviet Union found that it is absolutely impossible to keep in Afghanistan. The cost is going to be very high, and the potential benefits of having a stable republic on their border was absolutely out of the scope. So they had to leave, and actually they left Afghanistan and they left the entire world arena, and the Soviet Union completely collapsed and was dismantled right at the same time when they were withdrawing from Afghanistan. Now, after that, the United States thought that since they helped the Mujahideen at the time, then they probably would be more welcome than the Soviets. And to their surprise, of course, that did not happen because definitely or evidently they did not understand the nature of their people and the nature of Islam. Now, plus the stubbornness and the strength and the resilience of the Afghani people, there was now Islam component. So Islam plus the local culture made it a very strong recipe for anyone to invade or to stabilize. Now, to say the at least from the pure political perspective, the United States relied very much on their allies in Pakistan. So the Pakistani who have already departed a little bit from the old British Empire, which was the main cause or the main vehicle for the creation of Pakistan, and the leaders of Pakistan, many of them were still pro-Britain to the extent that one of my friends in Pakistan says the Pakistani generals would sit in their maze on their clubs with a small puppy dog on their laps and a stick in the hand, resembling the British generals. So, but towards the end of the 70s, 80s, and then of course with the time of Dia al-Haq, and later on the Americans were able to have a big influence in Pakistan, which was reflected later on their ability to mobilize some forces in Afghanistan. Having said that, it shows that the Americans were able to penetrate. However, they came to realize that they cannot sustain their authority or occupation, if you will, in Afghanistan with military power. So they had to make deals. And going back to the issue of the deal, and that's what we have seen in Qatar, and the deal of the withdrawal, even in a manner withdrawing the troops in a manner that Biden saying we were able to withdraw 100,000 of our personnel, and many people did not know that the Americans had that much existence, that much numbers, 100,000 within a few weeks. It's amazing, with almost no incidents except the one that happened yesterday with the claim
Economic.
being put on. with a claim being put on ISIS. But am I cutting off?
No, 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 no. I just wanted to, one second, Abu Talha, just on that issue. Brother Rahmatullah, Sheikh, you were just there. I mean, how long were you there in Afghanistan? When were you there?
I was there for actually about 2.5 months, something.
Right. So now, when you were there, I mean, did you have any idea that we would be sitting and talking about this being on the ground? Were you able to observe anything close to what we are seeing today on our TVs?
Yeah, actually, I'm still very much surprised because I did know the strength of the previous government, and I did know the capacity that they had, and I was aware as an Afghan and a person who lived in that country, the capacity of Taliban. And I would say nobody would have even written as a fairy tale that this would happen in this situation, like they will collapse so easily and so on and so forth. No, this was not predicted by anybody, and I was very much surprised how everybody was surprised how this whole thing happened basically.
So even on the ground, while you were there, I mean, you were there Ramadan, you were there. You've been through all over Afghanistan. I mean, we were in touch with you when you were in Afghanistan. So you couldn't predict this. You couldn't even think that this is.
I would say even the Taliban themselves couldn't predict it.
Uh-huh.
They
Well,
they when they entered Kabul, they were not ready. They had no plan to capture Kabul.
So Abu
So
Talha, you were about to say something.
well, I would say yes and no. There is yes, which is that's what the public news is about. What the people are really, that's what we have seen. But the no is that the negotiation that were taking place in Qatar for almost 3 years, the first talks and then negotiation, and the very much of the leaked information was very predictable that the United States will not be will not leave Afghanistan until and unless they know that there is an entity that can stabilize the country. And throughout the 20 years that they were there, it was evident that the only group that can stabilize Afghanistan is Taliban. And this was what Abdul Salam Daif was talking about a few days ago, that
On TRT,
everybody,
it seems. Yeah.
yes, everybody should have known that Taliban is the only group of people on the ground that can stabilize the country and can maintain security over all Afghanistan, not necessarily Kabul and some spots. And this piece of news was known to the observers. So at least I'm speaking for myself, and I've written about that. That especially during when Trump first announced, in fact, not Trump, even before that, Obama, who mentioned that we need to be out of Afghanistan by such and such year, within a few years. And then, of course, came Trump, and Trump emphasized again, we will get out of Afghanistan, but at the right time. And the right time is, again, that's what we have seen on the ground. So what I'm saying is, look, it may, the timing, let's say, could the United States really get out in a few weeks uh, of airway bridge that they have evacuated so many people within 2 or 3 weeks? That would have been probably logistically, it may sound very surprising. Uh, but to say that the least that the plan to get out, and there were some negotiations which took place in Qatar for long time, and the
So you're
agreement.
saying this was observable. This was coming.
Yes, this was
How?
coming, and
I mean, the
it
speed of
was
it maybe
even.
not known, but
Yeah,
yeah,
the speed that now, exactly, that's the speed in the last few days, let's say. And that's where there were last minute negotiation. Taliban, please stay on the outskirts of Kabul. Let's try to get the government out first so that we don't have fight. That was
Sheikh,
the only thing. Yes.
Sheikh Omar, just a question for you. Sheikh Omar, any knowing what you know about Taliban, I mean, what you have studied, you know, there is all this Taliban 1.0 and 2.0. So, what are you thinking, Sheikh Omar? 1.0 or 2.0, does it make a difference?
Bismillah. Like any organization, it evolves over time. So the Taliban that existed under Mullah Umar and the Taliban that exists today, they're very, very similar, but they have also evolved. They've evolved in some ways, like they've learned to deal with the international world in a way that they were not ready for in the beginning. Okay, they have dealt with the media, and the thing is that the people that had good feelings towards Afghanistan and Taliban, many of them that were intelligent, or you know, their know-how was more, they connected with Taliban later on in the process of things, like certain journalists in Pakistan, for example, you know, or other intellectuals who generally were of the same culture, but were also intellectuals and were also, you can say, had the Islamic color on them. So they leaned towards them. So now Taliban didn't have a large pool of talent in the beginning, okay? But their pool of talent right now is much larger comparatively to the beginning. There's people who supported Taliban in the beginning of the movement, from the outside world in particular, and from the intellectual academic world, versus now, Taliban was able to reach out many of its own intellectuals, many of its own influential peoples, and it made deals all across the country with the different tribal leaders. And so they were able to exert, they were able to do things in a lot more controlled and mature fashion, because of the political, you can say, the currency that they've earned over time, you know, and also their pool of talent has grown.
So I mean, I guess what I'm asking is that, you know, there's a lot of discussion that.
So yes, they have evolved. I think for the better is my feeling.
Okay, and Brother Rahmatullah, what do you think? I mean, the same question. I mean, you're dealing with them on the ground.
Yeah. So just to comment on the previous question, Brother Abu Talha question, and he answered it. Yes, it was actually predicted, but I've met with the people who are on the negotiation table, and I've also a friend of mine who is training those people to go on the table in Qatar and talk to them. And when I talked to him, okay, what are you training? There were 40 days training to those people who were sitting there. They had to go through a training of 40 days, how to talk in the Qatar with the Taliban. So the trainer was my friend and colleague of mine.
You have to get him on the show. I would like to be trained.
So basically, yes, he told me that the reason Taliban card is much powerful because they have one team, and that particular team is working only for one goal. And other side, there were ideas. Okay, let's make Afghanistan a federal government. That was one idea. The second idea was let's divide, like some part of Pashtun, mostly Pashtun people. Let's give them to Taliban, and Tajik, Hazara, and Uzbek should be with the government, and we'll divide it in this way. There were different ideas, and of course, there were geopolitics involved heavily. Iran was involved, Pakistan was involved, China was involved, America was involved. In between, America had a few interests. One interest was TAPI project, that has to make sure the Taliban, anybody is in power. So the best interest of America was to give control to someone who can control all of Afghanistan, because they don't have to deal with 3-4 parties. And they didn't care what they have built, the equipment or the government or the people or the so-called democracy of revolutionism or liberalism or women rights or unveiling women or whatever you name it. That was not their concern at all. Their main concern economics. There were no defense contractors anymore happening, so that was reduced. Number one. Number two, there was TAPI project which coming from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, through Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, coming to the Western countries. So somebody need to take care of that project. And there were other in the deal. Some people have read the deal so they can understand it in more details. So yes, it was. You can say perceived that Taliban would take the prime locations in control, but it wasn't predicted with this speed and this mannerism that America is literally intellectually being molested by the events that have happened in Afghanistan, and their political presence being molested. I don't know if molested is the right word or not. It happened to them, So their image, and that wasn't the idea what happened on the ground, because I've talked to people who are in the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior Affairs, with the close to the president. That wasn't predicted. That's one part. Now coming to and if they taken the control.
Hold on. Rahmatullah, one second. So while you're having these conversations, Doha agreements have been going on since 2018. So
Yes.
when you're discussing with these future diplomats, people who are in who might be coming into power, I mean, were they not thinking that this is all a game and that the real power
They
holders are?
they were mostly how can I say, if I rent you and send you somewhere, it was something like that. They were mostly rented people going and coming. Nothing was
I
in their
like that term,
decision.
rented people. This is a new one. I like it.
Yeah, they were like, I'm renting your car. Let me take it and come back. Remote. They knew they had no decision. For example, American agreed. The agreement is online. People can read it. American agreed with Taliban that we will release 5,000 prisoners. And Afghan government, they were saying, oh, we're not going to do that. They're going to go back to the war, blah, blah, blah. Let's open up a jirga in Kabul in March and let's invite people. They invited 5,000 or something people. Then spend like $500,000 on one single day. Make a big drama. At the end, it was an agreement that you have to release these people. It was just a event taking place. But behind the scene, everything was clear. Now coming to the Taliban and their version 1.0, I don't know who updated them. Which Play Store, Google or
You have to go
iPhone.
with the times, 2.0.
I think people are following this software, 2.0, 1.0. I don't know which Play Store or Android. That has to be cleared, from where people can download the new version. So basically, I think as a brother Omar mentioned it, the geopolitics has changed. In 1991, internet wasn't a thing. In 1996, global finance wasn't the way it is today. Now cash has to go through a payment gateway, through America to New York Bank. The stock market wasn't a big deal, and things like that. Taliban, I think they have realized if we don't form an inclusive government, we won't be able to survive. Things have completely changed, and they are actually not out of choice. They are forced to form an inclusive government to evolve, and they are forced to go along the line of international community, get their help, work along with them. I know even if they don't do that, China will still recognize them, Russia will still recognize them for their interest, but they know they will not be able to stay in power. Now the biggest problem that they have, unfortunately, lack of skills. I have mentioned before, I hope Islamically it's okay. I've said that the country can't be built with Suri Falak and Suri Nas, just recite it in Chuf. No, things can't build. We need engineers and doctors, and that is what's lacking. I think that's what they're trying to do, recruit people. But unfortunately, the people that I knew who had talent, engineers, doctors, they have all left the country. I wish if they could come up with a deal with Americans that they don't have to take the people. And unfortunately, even here, they played a role in Afghanistan in a negative way. For example, in America, if you're going to, get somebody to pay you taxes, federal taxes, you have to spend at least $250,000 on them. And now you're getting educated people out of Afghanistan. You need the workforce in Germany. We need 1 million people to work. There's lack of workforce. You need people in France. You need people in UK. And you have people already educated who believe in your values and they have worked based on your principles. And of course, that's a good thing. It will have a huge negative impact on Afghanistan for the next 5 years. Like, pilot is not there, engineer is not. I'm telling you, the people that I knew, none of them have left. And talents, like, I don't think so those talents can be replaced in the next 10 years. So that's the biggest challenge they will face.
Okay, we'll have to come back to this, inshallah,
Yeah.
Brother Rahmatullah. Abu Talha, is this, how much is this about Taliban 2.0 or the American strategy?
Well,
What you are
I think
observing on the ground?
I think Brother Rahmatullah really outlined it absolutely correct. It's eventually America does not care about people anywhere in the world, not even in their own country. They don't care about people. They don't care about democracy. This is hoax. They don't care about the women being mistreated, or treated badly. That's hoax. The worst treatment of women ever in the history of mankind is in America. These are statistics. There is a woman beaten in America every 50 seconds. One woman beaten every 50. These are statistics that have not changed over the last 60 or 70 years. So let's put this on the table. America does not worry about anything but the flow of dollars from the world to America, and the flow of goods from America or America clients, including China, because China is mainly supported and financed by American capitalism. So they want these goods to be flown from the West and their agents to the third world, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Egypt, and the rest of the world. That's what America cares about now. Including there is the TAPI project and the oil pipeline and the gas pipeline from Turkmenistan and Tajikistan, Indian Ocean, and then of course to Europe. This was the project that actually was one of the causes for the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. It was not September 11. September 11 was made a pretext to do that only. The whole issue, the whole orchestration were for twofold. Number one is to get the oil and the gas pipelines coming through Afghanistan with stability and power. Number two, there was another issue, which is to claim that terrorism is the world type of buggy which could scare the people and make the people run to the United States for help, especially the Europeans and the others. And they played the game of terrorism. They created terrorism. The United States created the concept of terrorism. They actually installed the word terrorism in the Oxford Webster Dictionary back in 1978, and they made the definition for that. And they use that definition until today with all types of events created in the Middle East, in Europe, and many other places. And then eventually they globalized terrorism through Afghanistan. So this was, for America, it was a gold mine for at least for sustaining a world order over the 20 years. Now they think, the Americans thought that it's no longer possible to continue to play the same thing. So let's finish this. And Taliban would come to power. Okay, big deal. They don't care whether it's Taliban in Afghanistan or Khomeini in Iran at the time of the Iranian Revolution, or even at the time during the Arab Springs when the Ikhwan rose to the power. America did not have a problem, except that, look, are our interests are going to be guaranteed, our security interest. Now, in Qatar, what was being negotiated through Qatar and earlier through Pakistan is that we have no problem of leaving Afghanistan at any point of time if someone can come and control it for us, not necessarily for us, but at least sustain the interest. So now, if you really focus in the next few months or coming few years, you will see that the consortium for the TAPI, which was dissolved a few years ago when the companies, the big corporations, they thought it's a useless project. So it was dissolved. The almost $12 billion went for no, just like in vain. Now, the news is coming from, if you follow the very detailed economic things, a new consortium from old companies like Unicol has been formed again, even before the agreement was signed. meaning that there is a consensus in the world arena that Afghanistan is going to be strong and stable under a strong control. And of course, Taliban with version 2 or 2 something for the last 20 years, they did form alliances within Afghanistan. They did form relations, internal relations, that they can actually maintain stability, despite the new news that in the Panjshir Valley there are some people are gathering with Masoud remaining.
Son of Masood, yeah.
But that's irrelevant. What's relevant is the main land of Afghanistan will be stable, and now you can continue building your TAPI lines. Now, uh, uh, one more comment on the issue. People are leaving, especially the intelligence, which is again that's another thing that America would like to get out of the of countries. Get me the people. A doctor who costs in America to prepare one doctor through the 4+4 years takes about $1 million. The cost. That's a number I got from the dean of medical school in Illinois, Chicago. He said the doctor cost us $1 million. If I bring doctors from your country, my country, from Jordan, where they made an agreement with some universities, get me your doctors after they graduate, and I will train them here and keep them. And they kept 2 of my sons. They were trained in the US, and then
Yeah.
they give them big salaries and taxpayers, as Brother Rahmatullah was saying. That's what they got out of Afghanistan, the people, the intelligentsia, of course, and they left the people who are the poor people who thought that they can join. They created an explosive area, and which we have seen a few days ago. The poor, the people who are desperate, who thought that the Americans were there to lift them up. Actually, America can send them bombs and destroy them, and can bring ISIS to really create a mess there. America has no mercy on no one. That's for sure. Now, Afghanistan and Taliban, there is no way in the world that they can regain the power of intelligentsia and people to come back until and unless they globalize their movement, which until now they don't want to do that. They, as long as they confine Taliban to be an Afghani with an Afghan tribal Islamic things, which is they call it Imara, which they actually version 1 or version 0 of Taliban. They said we are Imara and we are only confined to Afghanistan. And today they continue to insist on that. So my opinion here, especially on this stage, and I'm talking all over the world about this issue. Look, Taliban don't repeat the old mistake. In order to be able to survive in a very massive world order, very merciless world order, where America left Afghanistan but did not leave the world arena yet. Not yet. America did not collapse as much as the Soviet Union did collapse. They still maintain big power. So in order to really navigate and survive locally, you have to be global. And that globalization of Islam is nothing but the Khilafah. Absolutely nothing. You,
So, Sheikh Omar, just to
one second.
go ahead,
In
go ahead,
fact,
go ahead.
this is the main problem. The main problem with Iran. Now, I don't have any problem with the Shia madhab myself. I'm talking about myself. Eventually, Muslims can come together on all types of issues within themselves. But when Imam Khomeini decided that Iran, we can export revolution, but we cannot export and expand the state, that was their graveyard. That was the kill for Iran at the time. And today it could be the kill for Taliban and Afghanistan one more time. And
Sheikh
Imara
Omar, just on what Abu Talha is saying, Sheikh Omar, what do you know as far as let's say I'm gonna come back to a lot of what we're discussing, but I need to kind of get what is happening within the scholarly circles as far as the conversations that you're hearing of what they are seeing on their TV screens. I mean, is it a complete mute, or is it? Do they even have something to say about this, or do they even have the understanding of what's happening?
So as far as Taliban as an organization is concerned,
No, I'm looking at that area. I'm saying that, look, Taliban do come from a Deobandi background. They come from a very scholarly background. Uh, yeah, this. So what happens to that global Deoband background? Uh, are the scholars looking at that and saying, like what Abu Talha is saying, for instance, that look, if they're going to live in this, if they're gonna compete in this merciless world, that includes scholars coming from outside. So I'm thinking, I mean, you being here, I mean, you're right, you're in the US. What are you hearing from the, let's say, the circle of scholars here
so
in what you are seeing?
like I was saying, that Taliban has compartmentalized its different departments. Okay, so the way Taliban is working as an organization, they have people that are doing the media, they have the people that are doing different talks, they have the people, they've sorted out what we need as different groups. Okay, and those people that are in those particular groups that are specialized, they have that knowledge, but not all of Taliban has that knowledge. Number one. Number two, that the issues Taliban is dealing with intellectually and in terms of a globalized world, um, I think that they are going to be facing many, many challenges. I'll give you one example. When Dr. Asra Ahmed Rahmatullah alayhi, when he went to Afghanistan to meet Taliban, okay, he went with some funds from Pakistan to Afghanistan, and he wanted to give it to Mullah Omar. Okay, and when he gave these funds, he said, "Look here, we have a suitcase of cash. We'd like to, give it to you." So Mullah Omar told Dr. Asra Ahmed Rahmatullah alayhi, "We don't have banks." Okay. So number one. Number two, I'll give you another example. That so there was a discussion between Tanzim-e-Islami and Taliban on different issues. And one of the issues that came up is that we've been having a shura meeting on what should be the color of the shirt of the police. Okay.
Yes.
So this is one side of the story. It's not the whole story, right? This is one side of the story, that they may lack a sense of what is priorities. Okay. Number one. Number two, that on the other side, like, let me give you the other side. On the other side, one order from Mullah Umar and all the poppy seeds were closed. Okay. So there's this, so they are, like I said, still a growing, or if we're expecting Khilafah from Afghanistan right now, I think that is a misfire. That is, Afghanistan's not ready to be a Khilafah. Number one. Number two, yes, it is a mistake.
Let me hold on, Sheikh Fuad. Hold on, 1 second. Let me just on that thought. Hold on, because there is something important. Are you saying that Afghanistan is not ready for Khilafah, or are you saying that Afghanistan on its own is not ready for Khilafah? Meaning, if there is help from outside, another place comes to help, it would be able to do it. But at this point, resource-wise, it's not ready for this. Is that? I'm just trying to clarify. That's all.
So number one, the first thing Taliban would have to do is convince its own people that Islam is the way to go.
Okay.
Now,
So they need time.
there's a certain cultural Islam that everyone agrees with. But if you tell some of the elders you have to give inheritance to your daughter, many of the Afghani tribal leaders are not okay with that, because the custom is something else. Okay. If you tell them you have to get rid of paper currency, this paper currency that we have, they wouldn't even begin to understand what I'm saying if I say that as long as you don't have gold and silver, you don't really have real currency and you're still within the system, as long as you have this paper money. So so again, what I'm trying to say is that Afghanistan elite, what they need to do is they need to invite scholars from outside first of all. Okay, I'm talking about the scholars. Invite Yusuf Qardawi, invite the other scholars from throughout the Muslim world, the big names. Invite Taqiyuddin Usmani, Mullah Taqi Usmani. Invite the scholars from outside. They need to have, Taliban needs to have a sitting with other Muslim scholars from other groups, from other thoughts, whether it be Hizb ut-Tahrir, who's been working on this for a long time, whether even Tanzim-e-Islami recently, Auria Maqbul Jan in Pakistan, other people that are out there. Taliban needs to sit with the intellectual Muslims, number one. Without that, they can't form this greater alliance. Okay, but I don't think Taliban is ready for a Khilafah, number one. Number two, even if it's not a khilafah, but if they're moving towards Islam, they still need to call out to the global Muslim community. And if they call out, the Muslim global community will respond, inshallah, in a positive way. But I don't think they want to do that based upon the conversations Dr. Rahmatullah had with Taliban. They were pretty adamant that they didn't want that.
I mean, that's what
They
Abu
had
Talha is
their
saying.
reasons. And so maybe if Taliban invites Brother Abu Talha to go over there, and this is the part of our problem, is that Deoband scholars are not going to invite someone who's outside the circle of Darul Ulum, right? And so until you don't have a group that is willing to bring together a group of Muslim scholars from
The
around
Muslim intelligentsia.
the Muslim intelligentsia, the Muslim scholars, and they all have different opinions. Everyone from Sheikh Suleiman Oda to Sheikh Safar Hawali to Sheikh Yusuf, you can name all of them. Until they don't invite
Those
these
two,
big
we would have to remove them from the jails first.
there you go. That
But
too.
then we'll talk about the rest. But Abu Talha, Rahmatullah, one question, so you have, Abu Talha, who is a teacher, obviously he's a scholar, and you have a scholar, Sheikh Omar, also a scholar speaking. Brother Rahmatullah, what do you think about that? I mean, you being in Afghanistan or being from Afghanistan, would that, do you accept what they are saying? Or, should something like that take place as far as the invitation to Islamic, the intellectuals of the Muslim world to Afghanistan?
It's a great question. Number one, Taliban, throughout their history, they have been very confined to geographical location, particularly Afghanistan. They did not even have a word on the Pakistan and their government and their decisions, and how much kufr and secularism was spreading in Pakistan, and how much has been entertained wholeheartedly, and there was no comments about it at all. So it clearly shows being in the country, functioning from the country, and then being your neighbor, and you still can't comment on any of that. It's a geographical confinement. So that's one issue that I have personally had with them.
But is that the cultural issue, Rahmatullah, Sheikh? I mean, is that
I will come to this point.
Okay?
I understand their limitations, that they cannot choose different locations, or they cannot function in different areas because they are limited in many areas in terms of finances and rich and everything. But generally speaking, they have not even attempted to speak to the international Muslim community and to try to engage with them, even get their advice and involve them even in this takeover. I would have loved if the Muslims from Turkey, Muslims from Egypt, Jordan, other countries would have come and sit between the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud and to make a peace deal amongst them. It could be a great example of unity, brotherhood, and prosperity towards a brighter future, and also display a good role of the Muslim leadership, Muslim brotherhood to the whole world. That will be a good example. But again, they have confined it with their locality. The second thing I am personally concerned, moving forward, I do not think that America will leave them alone, that they can basically function as a Imara. Oh, that's even a question. I mean, the scholars are here. I'm not here. I'm not the person to speak on the subject. If you can have an Imara without the Khilafah, so it's a different question. But I would say America will give them, or particularly other countries, will give them enough problems within Afghanistan. I know Panjshir Valley and other provinces are just a noise in the corner. There's no support with them. But I'm afraid there will be a different group created inside Afghanistan with a different label. Either Daesh of Khorasan or ISIS of Khorasan is a label. For the first time,
it's already there. It's already there.
No, I just heard it from Joe Biden. This term was never used in Afghanistan. Nobody has used this term. The first person I heard it was Joe Biden. So these
there was while the bombings were taking place. I mean, I get on the subject that you're speaking. I wanted to know, do you think the idea that let's keep them busy, constantly so busy that they can't even think outside the box, is the bombing that are taking place? And then America today, they said again that there are. Is this to keep them busy, not thinking about what needs to be done, and just keep thinking about confinement?
I think the issue is, number one, the Taliban did not engage the Muslim community from day one. Number one. Number two, even the Muslims are somehow in obedience to the American policies. Many Muslim countries, unfortunately. And since there's no relationship from day one, and if they want to build relationship, they will have enough to deal with inside the Afghanistan. They will keep one or two people from the previous government, from the previous politicians or tribal leaders to go against the Taliban. That's one trouble they have to deal with. The second trouble they're dealing with the lack of intelligence and lack of skilled workers. The third trouble they would deal with the different groups. The reason I'm saying different groups or why this will be escalated, because Taliban have limited the Islamic fiqh only to Hanafiya, and they do not appreciate or accept any other explanation within the Islamic schools of thought. If it's Salaf, if it's like even Shafi, if you like Hanbali, or if you go for Maliki, anyone you go, they don't really entertain them or see them as equal to them as compared to a person from the same schools of thought, from Hanafiya, and then from Deoband, and then from Madaris and things like that. So that is one issue. So when you have this gap, and definitely Western countries do see this gap, they will definitely create a group within the gap and then support that group. And they will create trouble for them inside the country, so they are engaged and busy with them, so they do not have time, money, resources, or the energy to engage with the wider Muslim community. That's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong on this.
So okay, all right. So one thing is okay. The issue that the intelligentsia, is being uprooted, removed. But Abu Talha, let me ask you, how much is this about China's strategy in this? What are your thoughts regarding this? I was reading foreign policy the other day. I was reading the foreign affairs this morning, and then the China Today, Russia Today, all of these newspapers that I'm reading from all over. One thing is very clear is that the moment America decided that it's okay for Taliban to come along, they're doing. It's like, they're talking most of the security is Taliban and Americans. I mean, at this point at the airport, we don't know. We don't know what the issues are, at least in that sense. But what is China and Russia thinking when all of this is happening? What do you think what's their strategy? What's happening in their brain when they're seeing this?
Well, look, China and Russia, they don't trust the United States not a single inch, and they both believe that any of these activities could be used against them militarily, intelligently, economically. It's one more piece of the puzzle that America tries to use. And that's why they rushed, both China and Russia, to claim that we have no problem in recognizing Taliban if Taliban is going to play within the international code, if you will. In fact, they were the first two big countries to announce that they have no problem in recognizing the new government. They have not done so, but they at least make this announcement. Why? Because they want to avoid hassle. A powerful militant entity on their borders can be a big cause of disturbance. In China, there are more than 150 to 200 million Muslims who are bordering Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. They are in China. I'm talking about the Rohingya. Russia. Yes, Russia has the control of its old allies from the old Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all of these countries, which almost more than 100 million Muslims, and the Taliban and the new Afghanistan can be a real source of disturbance there. So they really want to avoid that. So Russia and China, they are probably the most worried about the new entity, and that's why they want to make quick deals to avoid any potential conflicts. Now, Afghanistan, under the leadership of Taliban, can actually utilize that, can benefit from that, but to do that, to do that, they have to come out of the tribal box and on one side, and the fiqhi madhab box on the second side, and the third thing on the what is called the ultimate joys or joy of being victorious, which is good, absolutely, but it's too early to celebrate. It's too early to celebrate because this is only one step in a long journey. So yes, I can utilize this type of a new dilemma between China and America, between Russia and America, so I can use it to my benefit to at least a little bit calm the so-called international coalition against Taliban and against Afghanistan, and it allows me to be able to grow into the real Khilafah state, which all Muslims want, and that's what make it. When I talked about globalization, when the state of Afghanistan becomes the state of Muslims, whether they live there or not live there, then they will enjoy the popular support, not only from the lawyer Jirga, but they will enjoy the support, as Brother Omar was alluding to, the scholars from Pakistan, the Hizb Islami of Israr Ahmad, of the International Ikhwan Muslimin or Hizb Tahrir, or many scholars around the world. So they become their actually backbone. Now, and this is a decisive moment, because I could see some notes coming here. It's let them rest a little bit. There is it was a big fight. Now it's a time to take a break. No, it's not time to take a break. When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina, it was not to take a break. It was, and he started between migration and Battle of Badr. There were 17 local wars, where they call Ghazawat, until that's why they call it Badr al-Kubra, the biggest Badr, until the conquest of Mecca, which was and Hujjatul Wada. There was no rest. The fighter and the one who establishes wants to really go up. It's not to rest or to pay attention to local issues. Now, which the brothers have mentioned, and I agree 100%. United States is creating ISIS Khorasan and making them big and giving them big boom with this explosion in the airport, which was facilitated obviously by the Americans to turn Afghanistan to internal fights.
Because just to, because I have to also get to the questions, but this is, it's kind of funny when you observe what was happening at the airport just 2 days before. I mean, it seems like a day before the Turkish soldiers decide that they're gonna just leave everybody, because it seems like they knew something was coming. I mean, everybody kind of pulled out their people, and this bang happens. So
look, Biden said we knew about it. We have intelligence reports.
Yes, 2-3 days before, over and over, and now they're saying there's another one coming. Allah knows, may Allah protect the Muslims there. I don't know what else they are planning, but I have to really get to the questions. But I have one more question for myself, Brother Abu Talha and the rest here, Sheikh Omar and Brother Rahmatullah. Do you think that, you said the Taliban are surrounded by over 100 million Muslims? Over 100 million Muslims around that area. You have Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. You have Xinjiang issue with China situation and all of that. Both sides of their borders are full of Muslims and who are being oppressed, suppressed. Do you think that they understand the kind of support that they can have, and do they understand that? What the kind of arena that they are in, the environment that they are in, and are they able to utilize this? All three of you, I mean, especially Brother Rahmatullah on this, if you can, and Sheikh Omar, everyone. But
in my humble opinion, I do not think so that they understand this, and neither they can utilize it, because no effort been exhausted on this area. In my humble opinion, they in the past 20 years they have not tried anything such. So that's my understanding.
But do you really think it's the issue of Hanafi fiqh? I mean, really, is it about Hanafi fiqh that's making them stuck in this box, or is it the understanding of the reality, the thinking process is not there? What do you think, Abu Talha, or anybody here,
Well,
or Sheikh Omar?
let me say something. I think I remember a time when we talked to Brother Israr Ahmed when he came to Chicago more than 20 years ago, exactly on this issue. Exactly when Tanzim Islami was very much localized in Pakistan, and he got the bay'ah from brothers from Pakistan, and we explicitly told him at any time soon, or doesn't sooner or later, you will find yourself in a position like what Taliban is in today. You are in power. It's very possible. The world dynamics can change, and your power can become stronger. You will find Tanzim Islami in power. If you do not globalize your movement and you extend your arms now, before you are in power, where you find the world Islamic world support. I'm not talking about governments of Pakistan and Qatar and those tiny little cartoonic states. I'm talking about the real Muslim power, which is the Muslim people led by movements and by scholars. You have to extend that, and you have to become part of this global movement, so that once you are in power, it's not, you don't start your journey because you will not have time, and they will not allow you, and you will be engaged in all types of local issues, trying to build roads here and there. Afghanistan is completely destroyed. America in 20 years destroyed the country. So now you have to worry about tiny little issues, and you will find yourself 20 years later that you are still in the same place. And so and then Taliban, the issue is not that they know or they don't know. That's not the issue. I think today we, the Muslim world, we need to, as the brother was saying, we need to come up and talk to them. Look, you are not alone in this. It's the entire Muslim world, and the whole Muslim world wants to be victorious. Not necessarily on the war front in Palestine or other places, but in this political front, so that we build an entity for the Ummah, and you be the leaders.
Yep.
We will
Sheikh,
give you the leadership.
Sheikh, there's
And
a
that's-
point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. That's my question to you. We have to first see, do the Taliban see an Islamic political movement of Afghanistan, or Islamic political party of Afghanistan, organization of Afghanistan? Do they see themselves as Islamic movement of the Muslims, or of the Islam? So I think that clarification
That's
needs
exactly
to
it.
happen.
Yeah,
And
I
after
think
that, we can extend our hands and we can, think
Exactly.
about it. We can expect them what they should
Sure.
do. But until
Sure.
now, as an Afghan, as a Muslim, as a Da'i, I see them as an Islamic political entity in Afghanistan.
Exactly. That's the core problem.
Yeah.
I think.
So, Sheikh Omar, is this about? I just wanted to get Abu Talha 1 second. I'm gonna get to the questions, but Sheikh Omar, is this about Hanafi school as much as it is about? Is it really about tribalism and the Afghani culture? And what is this about? I mean, is it about Deoband school? Is it about what do you think? You being from the traditional schooling of the from the Islamic tradition.
See, the Afghanistan, when you look at its history, recent history, not farther history, but the last 50 years or so, Afghanistan is a culture, especially its elite, okay? They had already become communist, a lot of them. Okay, that's why they were inviting the Soviets. So what I'm saying, and then you have the cultural aspects. Then you have the Jahiliyyah within the deen, right? You have this kind of cultural Islam within Afghanistan. Then you have, on top of that, Taliban, who are a little bit more enlightened than their public, believe it or not, okay? Then on top of that, there are other levels, but the point I'm trying to say is this, is that the people, those communists, those people that don't even understand basics of Islam, their Islam for them is their culture. Taliban hasn't convinced its own population yet, okay, that Islam is the way to go. And until, because Allah gave them power, but the way the Prophet came into power was the public was convinced, okay, this is the way to go. There was a critical mass of intellectuals in a critical mass of the populace that was with the Prophet, like wholly and fully and completely. Okay, Taliban is with itself, meaning within their own group, they're good, right, as an organization. But they still have to get the buy-in of the hearts and the minds of the people that this is our vision of Islam, this is what we want to bring, right? This is our plan, this is why it's good for you. They need to use the media for that. They need to bring the people and convince the people Islam is the way to go. If they don't do this, then you will get outsiders pushing the Afghan public in all sorts of directions, okay, that are going to be against Taliban. Now, coming specifically to the issue of fiqh, that even in Darul Uloom, when you ask many of the people of Darul Uloom, what is your concept of Islam? Very little of it has something to do with economics or politics. Or so even when Taliban is saying Islam, 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 they're probably not thinking much beyond hudud laws.
Yes,
Okay,
true.
so
Yes.
their own view of what they mean by Islam, right? Just because they got power and they're saying Islam doesn't mean that they're thinking of that Islam that we're thinking of, which is Khilafah.
No, it's true. I mean, within the Dars Nizami, I mean, within the school, the Dars Nizamiya that they
By the
teach.
time you finish the Kitab al-Tahara and Kitab al-Salah and Kitab
Yeah.
al-Bayu and Nikah, and
And
then
then 8 years
by
are
the
over.
time you get to, your 7 years are gone.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. By the time you finish all of this, you don't have time to learn Islam.
Yes. So, all right. On that thought, let's go to the questions because they're killing me. I'm getting all kinds of signs that we need to get to the questions. So, someone, as a huge board in front of me, they have written, they're saying, please clarify what the Khilafah is, so the people don't think of ISIS.
Let me
Anyone?
let me take half a minute on this. I think Brother Omar just clearly outlined that what Khilafah is Islam beyond Tahara and Salah, is including and beyond. That's what Khilafah is. Khilafah is a state. Khilafah is the political entity of the Islamic system, but there is the economic system, there is the social system, there is international relations, all of these within the Islamic scope. Once you have them, all of these issues, you do have the Khilafah. Khilafah is not a mysterious issue. It has been there for 1300 years. It's a well-known concept, but you cannot confine an Islamic entity to borders. You will be in borders whether you like it or not, but you don't define it as this is your scope. And unfortunately, let me mention a very bad example. The Jewish state in Palestine, which is called Israel, deny or reject absolutely to define border, because they say once we define borders, we are confined, but we have to leave it there. So that's on our Khilafah issue. I could be in Qatar or in big Afghanistan, but it's not the Islamic Imara of Afghanistan. It's not the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is not the Islamic Khilafah of Egypt. For example, so Khilafah is the state which runs all the Islamic rules and laws, which includes the economy, the money, the monetary, the financial, the corporations, the internal relations, including the jihad, including all of this. So it's not something mysterious, but we need to get out of the box to think about it, and it's not far-fetched. Afghanistan can be a weak country, not because it's weak, but because it was devastated purposely. But to rebuild the country in a manner that's suitable for Islam and the Muslims, that is not a big issue. The big issue, when the people, Muslims, come to the aid in the real Muslims. I'm not talking about Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. These are the kill. These are the kill. These are the ones who will put Afghanistan back 1,000 years back. But I'm talking about Muslims. I remember, as the brother was saying, in Germany, in Britain, in the United States, millions of Muslims, intelligent Muslims, doctors, engineers, scientists, are more than willing to move back to any place which they think it's their. This is my Muslim state, and I will do it only for better and bread. And this was Brother Shirazi when I was in the US, in Motorola, and other places when I worked. And I talked to so many brothers at the time from all the Muslim world. Each and every one of them would say, the moment there is a place which is called my state, no longer a national one, I am willing to move back, not even for a salary, but to feed my children and teach them and protect them and give them the safe haven. That's reality. All
And
Muslims
protect the
want that.
aqidah of the Muslims. This is the most
Exactly.
important.
So, and this is an historical time. I know it's very difficult, and now Taliban don't have the time to even to listen because they are in big crisis. There is a critical moment. So I wish this had happened weeks ago before they took over the government, but better late than never. That's all I have to say.
So here, inshallah, that brings another question, but I'm going to go to the questions that people are asking. Uh, a lot of the questions are regarding, and it says here, anybody can jump on this. Would you think that NATO would stop evacuations and turn around and restart the attack on Taliban to save face after the embarrassment that they faced after running from guys from AK-47s? I guess they're asking that would. I think Abu Talha went for Fajr, but is this a possibility? I mean, I think this has been answered. No, I mean these are questions.
Yep.
I mean, these are questions that are coming here. Let me look.
Actually, just to answer the brother again, no, it's NATO wouldn't do that. They will just embarrass themselves again and again if they even try in that direction. I just want to comment on the Khilafah, just for the youth so they understand what it is. You hear about Illuminatis and world order. That is the, that what you can hear that. So let me put that in context. In Islam, we have one Khalifa, and that Khalifa has the Shura and everything, which is that Khalifa rules is not only limited to a particular country, it's for the whole Muslim Ummah across the globe. And then we have Amarats, Amirs in different places. And once the Khilafah is established, it would be the best thing to happen to the world, not only to the Muslim, but even to non-Muslims. I highly advise them to read about the Khilafah and the Khalifa, because it's been proven for the past 1300 years that even when the Iceland was in a crisis and they were suffering with the lack of humanitarian needs, and the Muslim dynasties and sultanate, they supported them. Khilafah was the reason that today we have chemistry, science, and technologies. Khilafah, having Khalifa and having those leadership was the reason today we have an iPhone and MacBooks and all these cameras. Like, for example, young Ibn al-Haytham, if you look at it, the Khilafah was establishment. It wasn't a capitalism to feed some of the companies and then distribute unjust wealth. It was that everybody saw themselves. There was justice, harmony, peace, not only for the Muslims, even for the Jews. It was the Khilafah and the Muslim leadership that the Jews were protected, that the Muslim was protected, the Christian were protected, and all over the world. They should read about it. And inshallah, that is not limited to one country. And once the Khilafah is established, you will not be bothered again to say, go back to your country, you Pakistanis or Afghans. That problem will automatically be solved. So if people are working towards it, then support them. Actually, it's good for you, good for us.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Okay, another question. It is directly to you, Sheikh Rahmatullah. He said, do you think Taliban will help again? I guess the question is, do you think that Taliban will be used against China like the way they were used against Soviet Union?
No, they will not be used. It's against China, because Taliban are smart enough. They know what they know about the situation and the politics, the world politics. Actually, it's a China's birthday party, you can call it. It's China's, like China, the child was born in Chinese government, something like that. Because Afghanistan is minerally very rich. We have coppers, we have lithium, we have everything that's needed. Based on some estimates, you have about 3 trillions reserve minerals in Afghanistan, and the world is moving forward towards more zero carbon and towards zero emission. They're moving towards, so they need lithium for their batteries. They need those materials. For example, Japan is literally running out of raw materials to build cars, to build mobiles, and they're finding countries. And I saw the Japanese foreign prime minister. He was saying that we have to deal with Afghanistan, we have to support them, we need to have established government. China has same trouble. For example, Tesla would be the biggest next thing, the biggest car auto mechanic company, and they need those resources inside Afghanistan. So, in the next phase of Afghanistan, from economical perspective, would be very prosperous. There will be stability, and every country will try to have a good relationship with Afghanistan because of the economical benefits they can get from that location.
Jazakallah khair. Sheikh Omar, this is for you. You mentioned the issue of the tahara and things like this. What the question is, what do you think? I mean, as far as the students of knowledge, advice being asked by a student of knowledge, uh, what do you think they should study, and how should they study if we are going to learn Islam?
Um, after the Darul Uloom curriculum, there are two subjects that I think that none of the Islamic universities, Medina, Islamic University of Malaysia, Islamic University of Islamabad, for example, there are two subjects that they're all weak in. Okay, the first one is history. Okay, the amount of history that is taught in the Darul Uloom, and the amount of history that is taught in Medina and Islamic University of Malaysia or Islamic University of Islamabad, and then the others, because these are the luminaries. Even Azhar, Azhar, they don't have even a department of history. Okay, so if
It does not have. It does not have. You said.
no,
Oh, interesting.
yes,
I didn't know that. That part I didn't know. Okay.
because if you invite an Islamic scholar to talk about rights of women, what will be the difference between the Islamic scholar and the Orientalist? Okay,
Oh,
the Islamic scholar will say Quran says this, Hadith says this, Quran says this, Hadith says this, right? And the Orientalist will say, well, in history this happened and Aisha did this and they did this and the Ottomans did this and the women did this, right? This is the different lenses in which they're looking at the world. The modern academic world, when it comes to Islamic studies or religious studies, is basically a department of history. So that's why they can't meet eye to eye, because the Orientalists are basically historians. Anyway, that's one place where we lack. Number two, and more importantly, we don't really have the ulama, they don't have a proper understanding or a proper connection, right? Rather, I should say, a proper connection with the Quran. Tafsir is one thing. Tafsir, when this ayah came down, but this doesn't help you how you take Quran into the modern context. You're still stuck in the back. So basically, how the Quran, what is it saying to you in this world that we live in? What is it saying to you in this world that we live in? What is the Quran saying to you? This is missing.
okay. So to continue with that question, Abu Talha, this is a question for you. As far as it's a question connected to that. There are many questions, but I'm just asking the question connected to that. Is that I mean, is it lack of what do we lack here? I mean, as far as like what Sheikh Omar is saying, that look, we're missing history, department of history, or we don't understand the Quran, or we don't have the proper connection with the Quran. So I guess the question here is, how do you what does that even mean when we say that connection to the Quran? Is that meaning that it can't happen until we actually implement it, or is it that people are not even studying it to implement it?
Well, I think brother Omar was very clear on this when Quran came to deliver an ummah from its jahiliyyah, and it did. So today when I read the Quran, I want to read it and explain it in a manner to deliver the Ummah one more time. So I want the ayat that were revealed at the time of Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab wa Tab to resonate with who is the Abu Lahab of the day.
Yes.
I'm not going to continue to say damn with Abu Lahab and his wife, but Abu Lahab and his wife are already damned and done. But today, when the ayat are being read and I explain them, I have to convey that to the reality. Who is the Abu Lahab of today? Who I should say Tabbat. Tabbat yada MBS, Tabbat yada MBZ, Tabbat yada JB, John Biden, Tabbat yada all of these tyrants. When once I start to relate this to the reality, you will find people, many Muslims, so scared to the bottom of their heart. But you will find the ones who resonate with that are like Omar and Hamza and Bilal and Saad and. So that's exactly what Brother Omar is saying. Today, the schools of what's called the academic schools of Islam, they are too strict not to allow this to happen. And once you start I have been giving tafsir on this issue, Quran as revealed, probably, and there are many tapes for that. And the critics which I get from the so-called classic scholars that where do you get this from? It's not in the tafsir. Of course, in the tafsir, when you read لإلاف قريش إلافهم, you will find it's talking about Quraysh. You will not finding it. This is the current world order is absolutely convenient with their trade issues, and they will not worship Allah Azza wa Jal, not knowing that it's from Allah. You will not find it in the tafsir. Ibn Kathir did not know about America at the time, and Tabari did not know, and Al-Qurtubi did not know. They talked about their era. So this is absolutely the critical issue. Now the other thing is the what we call the globalization of the movement. Look, yesterday I was in a discussion with brothers here, and they were arguing with me. Where do you get this from? I said, look, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he migrated to Medina, he sent Mus'ab to Medina. So Mus'ab was a globalization part of this. And when the people went to Al Habasha, they did not run away from the torture. Muslims, the last ones to run away from torture are Muslims. Bilal, he absorbed all the heat and did not want to run to Abyssinia. It was a matter of globalizing the movement. When the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Dharr al-Ghafari when he accepted Islam, he said, go to your town, to your place, stay there until you know that I have been victorious. That's a part of globalization. So when Islam was a state of Islam was born, it was born global at the time it was born. It was not a step towards that, and that need to be taught and learned by Muslim scholars and Muslim students that the
But Abu Talha,
globalization.
is that about more? That this is anybody can answer this because it's with the following question. But with what you're saying, is this more about a colonial mindset that because for the last 100 years we have been in such a colonial mindset that we cannot think outside the box, or even we are scared to think even. So I guess the question is, it's has Afghanistan, the victory in Afghanistan, or like, or inshallah the coming victory, or at least a hope has opened, is this opening for removing the colonial mindsets, meaning the tribalism, the even some just sticking with just madhab issues, and coming out of that and looking at the world the way it is? Do you understand? I guess I guess
It's
I'm
part
saying
of that, brother.
how much does colonial mindset have to do with the kind of closed-mindedness that we have today?
It has to do all of it actually. It's 100%, 100%. This is the British curricula that they built over the last 100 years, which continues to persist in Pakistan, Afghanistan, in Egypt, in Turkey, all over the world. Today we are learning Islam from the perspective of the British and the French and today the Americans. That's it's unfortunate, which is the separation of Islam and the state, separation of Islam and life. Today, actually, they're removing some of the parts of Islam which they left it. They thought it will not impact the people. Today, they are taking this away even further. It's but look, when Muhammad going back to our seerah, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given this message, he was alone, and it was the whole jahiliyyah around them, but using the proper wahi that was revealed to him to deliver an ummah, he was able to do what he did. So, and I think this type of meetings, brother Shiraz, you are making, it's just one step along the road. Although our talk was Afghanistan, but today we are our concern is the whole ummah, and we really want to see Islam back to be the sustainer of the world order and justice for all.
This is there's a question. This is all for four of you. We only have 5 minutes. 5 minutes left, inshallah. But there's three critical questions that I want to ask. This is, please, anybody pick up the questions, and if you have anything to say, please do. Someone asked. They said, "Look, this is a sheet of paper questions that I've been." So it says, "We live in Afghanistan is in the middle of four nuclear powers. 70% of population of the world lives in this area. 60% of GDP of the world is in this area, and after the Abbasid, the Islamic world was ruled by this area. How much, talking about United States leaving this area, can really United States, can they really afford to leave this area with having this kind of power base in this area, meaning with four nuclear powers: India, China, Russia, Pakistan, who knows what Iran has, huge populations of the world, huge GDP of the world, and the most of the ummah. Can they really afford to get out of the game? Because pulling out of this area is pulling out of the real game.
I would like to say that the U.S. is being replaced by Israel as the next superpower. And Israel
that's a huge one.
Israel is now going to work hand in hand with India to try to exert as much influence as they can over Afghanistan. And America it's the end of American history, really, from in many ways. This is the beginning of the end. And Imran al-Bayt al-Maqdas, the rise of Israel and their friendship with India, as also mentioned in the Quran, that you'll find the mushrikeen and the Yahud the most against you. This is now going to take place in its full. I think you will see this friendship bloom again in its full blooming. India has been trying very hard to be part of Afghanistan. They've been kicked out each time by Afghanistan, but one way or the other, they're going to try to find their fingers in there.
I mean, they had 17 offices. It seems they had to close all 17 offices. What do you think about this, Rahmatullah, brother Rahmatullah? About this? This is a very amazing strategic setting that Afghanistan is in. I know you mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted you to look at this. I don't know if you saw it before.
Yes.
Being in the middle of such superpowers and the kind of momentum and the kind of base that Afghanistan can build if done properly.
Yes. Number one, America is dealing with their own issues. They have started the lifestyle which is not sustainable, and therefore they have a lot of things to deal internally. Number one. Number two, they have not left the area completely. They have complete financial influence on those areas. They are in close, of course, contact with Pakistan and India. That's very clear. Again, they're in close contact with Tajikistan. It's under Russian influence, but they are heavily in contact. If anything happens, they can, Qatar is very close by. They can do something they want. But what is really happening actually, The people are on their side. Taliban, again, they have trouble dealing with the secular Muslim inside Afghanistan and inside Pakistan. For example, on the March 8th, there was an Aurat March in Pakistan. In
Yeah.
Afghanistan, I'll give you some statistics that, American lottery, people apply for them. So, and only in Kabul, you have 5 million people are living there. Out of 5 million, you have 3 million educated. So, out of 3 million, 500 successful applications were made for American lottery. So now you imagine how many people in Afghanistan thought about it, how many people tried, they couldn't make the application successful, how many people didn't have internet connection. So that much they have influenced the area. And I think that influence can last for many, many decades. And that can work. Now coming back to the old story of nationalism and colonialism, yes, unfortunately we have been colonized our minds. Today, you get your Muslim brother from India and let him burn Pakistan flag, and wallahi that person will be killed right there because you disrespected my country. And if the same Indian Muslim disrespect the Sahaba, and then he's considered some different fiqh of matters, if he disrespect the Prophet, and again he says, leave it to Allah. If he
Yeah.
disrespect Allah, again leave it to Allah. But if you disrespect your flag, no, the whole channel will be talking about it. They will be like, breaking news, dumb, dumb, dumb. A guy in India has just burned our flag, and that cannot go on, and we have to do something about it, and the meeting will take place. That is the mindset they have installed in us, unfortunately. And I think they do have huge influence even over Taliban. America, Taliban, they still are under influence of America. For example, they have they have seized more than $9 billion. What Taliban can do? Nothing, unless obey them in certain areas, and then they will release the funds. So the politically, the technological, political, a lot of things. I think we are not free yet. So they're not there. We are not free yet. Only the presence is not there, and the presence not necessarily anymore.
All
It
right.
would
So
be
on that end, go ahead, Sheikh Omar. You want to say something?
I wanted to just say that it would be a big deal after 20 years of war, that if Afghanistan brought peace, it would be a big deal. If they brought peace in their area and they applied some level of tribal Islam, whatever, it would be a big deal if people healed just from the war.
Yeah,
Okay.
inshallah.
But what I think is also we're going to find a lot of Islamophobia because history repeats itself. And if history repeats itself, then I do feel that they will use Taliban and their naiveness at times or whatever fake videos they can easily make, but they are going to go full-fledged on Islamophobia with using Afghanistan as a way to connect Muslims from what could be possible.
But I wanted to just your advice, inshallah, that hopefully they start at least a department of history to learn from that. So,
Yeah,
but
I'm not talking about Islamic subjects that relate to history. I'm talking
yeah,
about a whole department of
yes,
history.
yes, inshallah.
Just because
No, no.
it's clear.
We have less than a minute. If you guys can please, what is our next step? What should be happening? The advice that you would like to give to the Muslims listening, if there are brothers overseas who are listening, the Muslims in Afghanistan are listening, what advice, 30 seconds each, if you guys can please take, that you would give to those who are listening and to the Muslim world in general. Bismillah ta'ala.
I'd say the responsibility on Brother Rahmatullah is very big.
We will, that's 30 seconds. Sheikh Omar, a little bit more than this.
That's a big statement.
It is. And I think a lot of people will have to say that. Go ahead, Sheikh. Dr. Abu Talha, go ahead. A few seconds from you.
We live in a critical point in history. Empires are fading away and cracking in front of our eyes. Soviet Union first, America is coming next. It's time for the new era of Islam. And we should not, as Muslims, settle to anything less than complete Islamic system, Islamic Khilafah, Islamic state, Islamic rules, and justice to be provided by Islam. We, as Muslim Ummah, we should not settle to anything less than that. We celebrate and appreciate each and every piece of move and victory here and there, but we should not rest until the complete Islam is implemented. And as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, ثم تكون خلافة على منهاج النبوة. We need khilafah on the footstep of the Prophet to come back soon, and we will be the soldiers of that, inshallah.
بإذن الله تعالى. Sheikh Rahmatullah, please. I'm sure everybody's waiting for you to say what you have to say.
Jazakallah khairan. So my final remark would be, number one, to the Muslims outside Afghanistan, please hold your horses and just wait a little longer. We rush before as well. Hopefully we don't rush this time. And wait until the situation is clear, and then you can show your support or hatred, whatever. You don't have to bother about anything right now. That's number one. Number two, to the Afghan people, that if they see, inshallah, number one, let me talk to Taliban. It's a turning point in history. It's unimaginable, unpredictable that something can like this happen in the name of Islam. So if it has happened, then don't take it for granted and try to implement the Sharia of Allah on people. And inshallah, people will be happy and Allah will support you more and Allah will give you more victory. And this victory is only from Allah, not from the what little authority or power that we have in this dunya. And the second that I would say to the Afghan people, you don't need to go after a tribal leader again. You don't need to go after your religious leader again. You don't need to go after a person who spoke your language or supported you in certain crimes and therefore you have to support him back. No, there is no need for that. Leave everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be united. And hold to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a khair for everybody. And inshallah, nobody is saying the current government is perfect. But if we all work together, we can make it perfect. At least close to the perfect. At least better than the last 4 decades that we have lived. And the same message to the non-Muslim world, I would humbly request them, if they can leave us alone. That is the only request that we have. There's no request to support us, give us money. No. Just leave us alone. But in return, we will help you. Trust me. We will support you with your Tesla company. With everything, we will support you. But just, they should be left alone. And to the brothers who have left the country, if you have left the country, it's fine. We cannot ask you to return back, but make sure that you still work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Support the Muslim ummah, not only in Afghanistan, but part of the world. And if you see yourself not useful in those countries, you cannot help the ummah. This life is temporary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Allazi khalaqal mawta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala." So that your good amal and ahsan amal can be done in a place that is beneficial for the ummah, for everybody. Then you should come back, return to Afghanistan, because that particular land on the ummah truly need your skills and truly need you to work for them. And that's my final message to everybody. Hopefully there's a positive change, there's a progressive change in Afghanistan, and hopefully there's a peace. And I hope one day from east to the west people travel and there will be only one fear, the fear of Allah, and no other fear.
Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. Dear brothers and sisters, first again to all the guests, to Abu Talha, Allah, to Rahmatullah, all the way from Germany, and Sheikh Omar. I don't know what part of the country you are in right now, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your families. Jazakumullahu khairan for this amazing discussion. And I'm sure you know that this will not be the last time that we meet. There is a lot to discuss. I will go with the opinion, the advice that you guys are giving us, which is we need to bring intellectuals, thinkers, activists, the sincere Muslims together in platforms like this to discuss real issues of this ummah, inshallah, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. So again, jazakumullahu khairan for all your time and your efforts and your energy. Inshallah, we will be meeting once again. And to all of those brothers and sisters who are watching this, jazakumullahu khairan. My few thoughts, brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Asbiru wa sabiru wa rabitu wattaqullah." Have patience and show more patience than the patience of your enemy, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is the fear of Allah, dear brothers and sisters, that has gotten us to succeed in this dunya and the akhirah. We have seen our forefathers in the past, whether they were the Sahaba, they were the Khulafa, and the ones later. We have always seen them succeed because of their fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not the time to go back to sleep. This is not the time to rest. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to his wife Khadija radiallahu anha and said, La rahata ba'da al-yawm ya Khadija. There is no more rest after this, ya Khadija. And this is the time that we are in, brothers and sisters. As Abu Talha mentioned, as Rahmatullah mentioned, as Sheikh Omar mentioned, this is not the time to rest. Rather, this is the time to stand up and work for this ummah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and seek the Jannah that we all want so badly. Once again, Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.